think. So it would be great if you could all come sit up closer and closer to each other. And I'm just gonna keep staring at you and making it weird until you do that. Thank you. And don't shy away from the front row. We have lots of spots if people need to situate themselves in. Fun presenters today, and they, I'm not sure how they found out about us, but we were really glad that they reached out and shared with us their ethos of, doing this architecture that really engages with public and communities in Portland. I think that we have a lot to learn from them. So, without further ado, I will have you come up to the stage and do your presentation.
Hi, my name is Dave Oddie. I'm an architect at Holst in Portland. I want this to be very interactive, so if anybody has any questions, don't hesitate to raise your hand or shout out in case I don't see you. And I want this to be a pretty casual presentation. So, Holst Architecture is a studio of 35 designers in Portland. We've been operating since 1992, started by two partners, John Holmes and Jeff Stewart, and that's how you get the Holst, Holmes and Stewart. What people call the office asking for Mr. Holst, so that's how we know when you're a solicitor. We have been lucky enough to do a number of fantastic projects in the last 8 years around social equity and social impact. So I wanted to talk about some of those today. But first, I wanted to start with a personal story that kind of tells you about where I come from and what's important to me when it comes to designing the built environment for those that don't usually get it. This is a picture of my brother, BJ. BJ was born with cerebral palsy and severe mental retardation, and it thoroughly affected my entire life. But there's a short story about when I was a kid in elementary school that I thought was pretty telling. I think it's always stuck with me when it comes to how you design a built environment. I was a latchkey kid, and so I would wait at home after school to have BJ dropped off by his bus. And then I would take him off the bus and take him home and wait for mom to come home. But we had this driveway, and this driveway was, in my mind, like this steep. Probably wasn't that steep, but it felt very steep. And I remember pushing this wheelchair up this steep driveway and then getting to this garage door and having to navigate this garage door and lift it, and then having to navigate him through the laundry room. And because that was the only accessible way to get into the house, couldn't go through the front door. And then into the living room, and there we could, watch cartoons or whatever, and wait for my mom. And I got the chance to design a new home for my family a few years ago, and that driveway moment sat with me, and it came back to me, and I remembered how hard it was, and so we wound up designing the entire house around the entry sequence, and around an entry sequence for anybody, not just people who can walk, but for my brother, for anybody in a wheelchair. And it was on the sloping side, but we still made it work so that it was completely universally accessible. So anyway, I think that just gives a sense of where I come from and what kind of drives me in the decisions I make when I'm collaborating with clients, with users, and trying to do better architecture. So I'm going to talk about 3 projects that we've done in the last 8 years. This is an aerial shot of Portland showing the locations. I've got a pointer here. So this, the first project is in downtown right here, called the Bud Clark Commons. The second project is out in what's called the Gateway District, called Gleason Commons. And then the third project here is called LifeWorks. And they all have similarities, but then they also have very specific program elements that I'm excited to share with you guys today. So first, the Bug Park Commons. This is a photo by a friend of mine, Israel Bayer in Portland, who is the editor of Street Roots, which is our homeless newspaper. If you're ever down there, please pick one up for $1 or however much else you want to pay. He's also a fantastic photographer and just person. And I thought that this image kind of captures what's going on right now in our communities, especially in our urban core. Just before this, I looked it up in Seattle. In 2015, they did their one-night count recently, and over 10,000 people in one night are homeless in Seattle. About a third of those are in transitional housing. About a third are in shelters, and the last third are sleeping on the streets, under bridges, in doorways, outside. In Portland, that number is a little bit less. We're probably around 2,000 sleeping outside instead of 3,000, but kind of shocking amount of people. This isn't a new problem. It's been getting worse, especially since the early 80s. And we keep trying to find ways to fix it, but it seems like those with the least keep getting left behind. So this project was a initiative of the city of Portland. They had, just like every other city had for, in the last decade, a 10-year plan to end homelessness that was tied to some initiatives by HUD. But part of that 10-year plan to end homelessness was a need for a day center, a place for anyone to come off the streets and be able to get a shower, use a computer, get some clean clothes, have a mailing address, a number of really vital things for people to be able to just live. And Portland didn't have one. Seattle has the Downtown Service Center, which was a model we looked at, but it's also sort of a renovation, sort of a horseshoe application. So there really wasn't any comprehensive day centers in the region, and so we were trying to create the first one. On top of that, the city wanted to provide a continuum of service all the way from not just the day center where you come right off the street, but all the way to temporary housing, ending with permanent housing. So this project has all three of those things in it. A photo of it. Oops, sorry. It has these three elements. It has permanent, on the ground floor is the shelter. The second and third floor, which is also at grade because of the sloping site, is where the day center is. And then the top 5 floors is 130 units of permanent supportive housing. The housing was also built around this new notion of housing first. You may have read some articles about the success Utah is having with their homeless population. A lot of communities are trying to use this housing first method of servicing the chronically homeless. And the idea is that chronically homeless individuals are more able to accept services and to make positive change in their life if they have a home. And so rather than the typical treatment or typical social service, which is, medical treatments, drug and alcohol rehabilitation, mental health, and then an apartment, this flips it around and gives an apartment right away, regardless of what shape you're in, regardless of what's going on in your life. Give you an apartment and then see where things go. This is a social method, but it's also based in economics. And I think it's a really important piece that I think everybody should take today, is that it's actually cheaper, significantly cheaper to the taxpayers and to the community to give people housing right away. On average in Portland, it costs $40,000 a year for a chronically homeless person to be on the streets, between emergency services, police services, social services. When you give that person a free apartment, that cost drops down to, including rent, drops down to $25,000 a year. It's a difference of $15,000 a year per person. And there are similar numbers coming out of Boston, out of Utah, out of Florida, out of a number of different places where they're trying this method. So it's not just, you know, humanitarian, it's also, it makes economic sense. Oops, that doesn't do it. The other thing we did at this building was go deep into sustainability. Every decision we made was based on long-term costs and operations of the building to make it as efficient and sustainable as possible for the operations. And so we wound up bringing in a lot of technologies that had high upfront costs, but we were able to convince the city that they would save the money over time, and usually a very short period of time. Every drop of water, every drop of hot water in the building comes from the sun. We had the largest solar array on the roof of any project at the time. And it's paid itself back since the building was built in 2011. It's already paid itself over. Heat recovery ventilators that capture heat of the exhaust leaving the building so that we don't have to preheat fresh air coming in. Super insulating the walls so that we're not losing heat. Efficient windows. You know, stormwater is a huge issue both in Seattle and Portland, making sure we're dealing with stormwater, so there's some creative ways for doing that. I'll show you some photos. And then things, you know, like low flow plumbing fixtures are pretty obvious, but then the lighting, but the last one at the bottom, the gray water catchment system was pretty unique. We were the first multifamily residential building in Oregon that was allowed by code to do gray water recycling. So we put in a system that takes water from the washers and the showers, clothes washers and showers, and uses it to flush the toilets rather than rainwater. And why do we do that instead of rainwater? Well, we had a very tight urban site, only half a block, and we didn't have a lot of land and a lot of area to catch rainwater. But what we did have was about 300, 400 people taking a shower every day and washing their clothes. So we had a lot of rainwater. And so we're able to recharge that tank, keep it very small in the basement, not have a dry summer where it goes empty, and always have that continuous flow of water for the toilets. It's also saving the city a lot of money. So let's look at the building. I'll try to go quick through it. Again, if you have any questions, please let me know. But here it is at the gateway to downtown Portland. It was very important to the city to have a building that was a gateway building that welcomed you into town. It's right next to Union Station. It's right as you come in over the Broadway Bridge. It's one of the first buildings you see when you come in from the northeast side of town. And so the level of quality, design quality of the kind of message that it was supposed to send to the community was very intentional that it'd be a top-notch design. The day center open during the day, but so this is the gate that closes it at night. We wanted to have a really welcoming space that could open in the day, and we didn't want to have it look like a penitentiary or like a jail. So the gate became an art piece for us, and we worked with staff and with residents and community members to come up with quotes, inspiring quotes about life that we could inscribe into the gate and laser cut out of the steel. And then a fun story about bureaucracy. We had designed it to be the entire gate, and the city deemed it a sign, which was larger than the sign code allowed, so we had to cut back a few people's quotes, which was kind of unfortunate. But that's the way it goes sometimes. So through that gate, you enter a courtyard, and this courtyard was a centerpiece of the whole building. It was meant to be the place where people can go where they don't have to queue on the streets. They don't have to get in line. They don't have to wait on the sidewalk. A much more dignified way for people to engage with the building, engage with staff, and also be a place where if someone's not ready to go inside yet, if someone's been living outdoors for years, isn't used to being inside a building, sometimes it's extremely difficult to go over that threshold. So this became an in-between ground where staff can come out and work with the homeless individuals coming into the building. and almost be like an outdoor room. Some of the stormwater that we use to help give a lush background to the building. I was there yesterday looking at some stuff, and this planter is now just gone crazy and it's really lush and beautiful. And then also engaging artists. This was an artist named Yuki Nagase from San Francisco who worked on how the stormwater flows through the building with us through the planters and the spigots. The courtyard. This image is just meant to show every part of the building has an outdoor space, every floor. So making sure everybody always has the ability to connect to the outside to get fresh air. The beautiful view. This is the entrance to the housing on the south end. This is a second courtyard that's down on the first level of the shelter, much more cloistered, much more private. This is for the people living in the shelter are out there for up to 3 to 4 months at a time. And so this was meant to have a much more private feel for them. They had come from a shelter where there was no outdoor space. If they wanted to go outside, they were on the sidewalk. So this gave them a place to be that has been really successful. And people have taken real ownership over it and take care of the plantings and treat it as their own. Backing up from that, going into the shelter, this shows a connection to the outdoors, from the inside to the outdoors. Places to exercise, get your heart pumping, places to lounge, something they certainly didn't have at their previous shelter. This was a replacement shelter in the old one. The only place you had was your bunk. There was no room to move. Sense of welcoming, a sense of dignity and that, you know, this isn't just a utilitarian building, but it's just as important as a library or a courthouse or your home. On the left is the shelter on the ground floor, looking to the courtyard. On the right is the day center. This is pretty much what it looks like all the time. It's usually got about 100 people flowing through one point or another, accessing services. The control desk is very busy. This is the kitchen. A fun story about this: when we were designing the building, we did some We did some shadowing where we went into the existing shelter and spent a few days and just watched and talked to people and engaged and tried to learn, because nobody had done a building like this in Portland before. Let alone the U.S. And you know, we were architects used to doing, you know, nice restaurants, high-end condos. This was not our thing. So there's a big learning curve that came with that. And one of the things we realized was that we had to do more than just job shadow for a couple days. So we set up a dinner with an architect where we had the architectural team, the construction team, the consultants, the engineers. Every month we would do dinner at the old shelter. And you'd have to cook the food off-site, and then you'd have to truck it to the shelter and you'd have to serve it. And by then it was kind of lukewarm and it was not optimal. So one thing we really pushed for with the new shelter was to have a real commercial kitchen. And it's really helped our volunteer efforts of people coming in to cook. It's given the people living in the shelter a great sense of pride, and I think for them to have some ownership in and run. And they're even now running a social enterprise out of this kitchen where they're making lunch boxes for office workers during the day. So they deliver all around downtown. So it's ideal, bringing, you know, from the initial nugget of design thought and trying to find ways to leverage parts of the project that can flower and have a different life that you might not even have imagined. Same with the art room. We went to a building in Austin, Texas that had this incredible art room, and it was not part of our program, and the director and I looked at it and said, well, we're going to have an art room. So we carved out some space, and right now this is completely covered in paintings and sculpture, and this is what it looked like on day one when it opened. And then the only picture I had of the garden was one of me walking through it. But this is the vegetable garden about a year later. And the vegetable garden is just the most incredible little garden you've ever seen. And people really take pride in it and get their hands dirty and engage with it. Another thing that came up in meetings with users and meetings with clients and, trying to find out what would help people. This is the large community room, which is used as a community court, and a variety of other things. It's also an emergency shelter, but its main focus every week is community court. And so the public defender, public prosecutor, judge, and basically the whole courtroom comes to this space. And they find that participation by people with misdemeanors is much higher when it's in a safe environment like this, rather than people going to a courthouse where it may be intimidating or frightening to people. So this way, people can get misdemeanors off the record quicker, which allows them access to renting an apartment quicker or getting a job quicker, all in the hopes of trying to give this comprehensive service. So I'm going to start really quick, but this shows the main space where the garden's up here, the art room is right above us here. Storage is a huge issue for homeless folks. Not having a place to put your things when sometimes people don't access service or don't go for a job interview or try to get an apartment because they don't want to leave their stuff. So having a place where people can leave their stuff is really important. Hygiene center over here where there are unisex bathrooms that have showers in them, so you can have a private shower and some time to yourself. Also helps with gender issues and gender equality and transgender. And then also behind here is a mail room where everybody can have an address. You can have an address and you can pick up your mail. Another big barrier for people who are experiencing homelessness. Stairs in prominent places to get people to walk, hiding the elevators so they don't, and making the elevator slow so they don't take the elevator. Little trick of the trade. Lots of natural light in workspaces. One of my favorite people, John Peterson from Public Architecture, has this stat that he always says that if you work next to a window, you get 46 more minutes of sleep a night on average. I don't know if I believe it, but I love that. I love that idea. Conference spaces that also doubles classrooms for GED, getting your GED or life skill classes. It's the community room again. And then upstairs in the residential area, bringing lots of warm materials, but also in very smart ways, using this wall paneling rather than flooring. So the flooring is extremely durable, but you still get that warmth of the wood. And then inside the units, they're extremely efficient. This is upstairs in the 130 units. Each one's about 300 square feet, but each one has a full kitchen and a full bath. And in that 300 square feet, we did a few unique things that I think really help the unit kind of feel bigger than it really is. This relight was something that we fought very hard for to keep it in the budget. That allows borrowed light to go through that window from the living area over the bathtub and into the bathroom. So you don't always have to have the bathroom light on, and you have that connection to daylight as much as possible. The closet also doubles as a bike rack. One thing we found is a lot of folks that were coming in to live in the building didn't have a lot of stuff, but oftentimes what they did have was a bike. And it was usually the most expensive thing they owned, and they didn't want to leave it somewhere else. So sometimes a bike rack was more important to them than a closet. So we just put a bike hook in there, and I think, a large percentage of people actually use them. One of the interesting things about the people who moved in to the Bike Park Commons is the Housing Authority used a method to select people based on vulnerability, not based on waiting lists. So the people that were the most vulnerable and the most in danger of dying on the street got into the housing first, which is very different from the way usually public housing works. It's usually a strict waiting list. And because of that, you got a lot of unique characters coming in. You had a lot of women coming in. The building is probably 60 to 70% women. and mainly because it's so dangerous for women to be on the streets. And you get a lot of amazing stories like this one of this gentleman who really took to his unit and fell in love with it. And then you have a lot of tragic stories as well. A lot of death in this building. This is the last place where a lot of people live. So it's you know, this building's like a part of me, and it's like my baby, and I love it. But at the same time, there's a lot of tragedy, and so it's this dichotomy that I go back and forth with. The next building is Gleason Commons, which is out in Gateway. You had a question? Yes. Yeah, so the permanent housing, you can stay forever because it is true public housing, but most people don't. I think anecdotally, it's probably about a year to a year and a half. Some people are there for a very short time, and then the units are designed to be very small so that they work great for one person. So they're pretty tight for couples, and children aren't allowed. Because the barrier, because of that vulnerability index, and because it's designed to help people who can't get housing anywhere else, which means you have people with criminal backgrounds and very high people with a need for a lot of engagement with staff. So I don't know if that answered your question. So Gleason Commons. This is also a homeless, a building for homeless folks, but also a ground floor that has services, a nonprofit agency called Ride Connection that is all about giving mobility to people and connecting people with transit options and the ability to move around. When you are poor and old or poor and disabled, getting around is a very difficult thing. Last year, Ride Connection gave 400,000 rides to people across Portland. They had 40,000 volunteer hours logged by their amazing group of volunteers. And they did one-on-one training to teach people how to use the light rail and the bus system and the bike routes in the city for 250 different individuals. So a pretty amazing group. This is a building that's really meant as a catalyst for the neighborhood. There hasn't been much going on in Gateway for a long time, and so bringing in something this big and this vibrant and this kind of bold, and this has this boldness to it, is really sort of a statement for the neighborhood. And then the fact that it's also housing for homeless folks and headquarters for nonprofit, I think, really speaks to the ethos of what they're trying to do out there. This gives an overhead. This is phase one. There's a phase two that just finished. It's also senior housing. Here's our project from above. They have a fleet of buses that all park over here where they do a lot of their transit. From outside, a lot of bold colors. Very, very inexpensive materials. This being out of the city core. We didn't have the kind of budget that we had downtown. And so, I mean, this is hardy board and metal siding, and just using it as crisply and as deftly as we possibly can to get a really tight, beautiful building made out of simple things. Ride Connections headquarters entry here in the middle. Oops, sorry. Oh. Here at night it glows, and this connects to the courtyard through the lobby. Courtyard can double as a place for festivals and a place for community events when it's not being used as a parking lot on the weekends, when the office workers aren't there. And then the lobby, interior Ride Connections headquarters, lots of access to natural light, lots of borrowed light. This is the community kitchen and the staff kitchen, and I think one of the reasons why I like this photo is it's really kind of in the back of the house. It's kind of, you know, it's in the guts of the building, but we still take as much time and care in even like a break room to make it as great of a break room as we possibly can, because for a lot of people this is like the place where they spend a lot of time. So I think it's just the amount of effort and care that you can take if you want to, and if you want to take the time really design things, the opportunities there. Office space with the natural light. We had to really fight to get the relights in the windows on the inside to be as tall and as large as possible, get as much broad light. This is a call center, so where they connect people with rides. So being able to have a private conversation, but also have a lot of connection to the daylight was important. So fighting to keep the ceilings high, fighting to keep lots of natural light, something that we were able to bring to the project. Community space that can be used for outside events as well. Moments, moments that are kind of delight. This is the executive director never had an area for people to wait to meet with her, and this is the first time she had that. Oh, sorry, corridor, giving everybody upstairs their own front porch. Community room, where you can also get your hands dirty with the garden. And then the units, where they're very small units, but we were able to build in this bar, which you don't usually have in affordable housing. It can double as a dining table, or a dining bar. And also brought in a commercial light fixture that you also don't typically see, but it gives a lot of light up to light up the ceilings so that you don't have to have the downlight on everywhere and have this nice kind of glowing ceiling, as well as the downlight on the bar. Living space. So the last project I'll talk about is LifeWorks Beach Street Apartments. This is a treatment facility for many women of color, and many moms. So lots of kids coming to the building with the moms. It's also not just a treatment center, but also permanent housing for the women after they get out of treatment. Last year, they served 75 women through this program, and the year before this building opened, they served 75 women and there were only 7 housing units available to them after those women got out. So 68 women had to fend for themselves. So this project was about trying to fix that. So it's here in the historically African-American part of town along MLK Boulevard. And serving primarily African-American and Latino women and their kids. So bringing the whole community in to be a part of this project was really important. The neighbors were extremely supportive and helpful. So I'll run through these. So big thing was a shared community room that split off 2 different courtyards, one for the permanent housing and one for the treatment side. A lot of rules around treatment about being able to see who's in treatment and privacy rules, and so we had to be very careful about how the project was developed that way. Color, natural materials, stormwater. Trying to use all those tools in our toolkit to create a vibrant and warm and welcoming home. Lots of kids, lots of happy kids at this building. The community room is here. This is the community room. It's used for family nights, birthday parties, movie nights. Entry. This is a group room. This is where the hardest stuff happens. This is where women are in treatment. And, moments where you can get a glimpse of the outdoors and you can go have, sit away from the group if you need to. Just small moments like that, places of color. Small touches that can add to a room where pretty tough stuff goes on. The living room, where all the women come and gather. Offices where their old facility, the caseworkers never had anywhere to put their stuff. Now they have small desks where they can actually get some work done. This is a child therapy room where there's a camera and a black one-way window here where a therapist can watch a mom interact with their son or daughter, and then provide therapy after that about how to problem solve for the kids. One of the amazing stats about this place is before treatment. This is about the kids, not the moms, but before treatment, the kids on average are 45%. 45% of them are delayed in both reading and math. And when they come out of treatment, that number is around 10 to 15%. So an incredible success story, not just for the moms, but for the kids as well. And this is the last slide, which doesn't look like much, but to me it looks like potential. Like this is what the mom and the kid came in, and like this is their room. The previous place where they used to be, they would be sharing this size room with another family, with another mom and another kid. And so now they have their own room. They have privacy. They have natural light. They each have their own window. And they have a blank canvas for the rest of their life. So I have a short video I wanted to play, and then we can maybe have a conversation. Where'd it go? Is that it? That's not it. There it is. No? Do you know what it is? There we go. Oh.
I spent just some time here, and actually, for the first time, actually walking the building and this actually motivate themselves to come off or to stop drinking.
People often feel that living in poverty is something they should have 3 years. It isn't, and they don't choose to be in poverty. They don't want to be in poverty, and they're really hard to get out of poverty.
I think that it's our responsibility as developers, as architects, to lift people up, provide them with dignity, and show them that our community does care about them.
This building brings about a lot of uplifting things to the kids and the parents, because some of them know we're kids, and the new ones.
This project is really a great example of being able to serve a wide range of needs, serving employees who are here on 24-hour shifts, serving families who are rebuilding and reuniting, and the degree of good design can promote the ability for people to be successful. I think we see that in a building like this where people are lifted up by good design.
You can find lots of examples of low-income housing that is just bare walls with a couple of windows here and there. We know that that doesn't enhance the quality of the neighborhood. And it makes the people in the neighborhood think that affordable housing is attractive to their neighborhood. And what we wanted to do here is to use color and light and design so that the building will be an attractive feature of the neighborhood.
This very thoughtful design, I think, really took into consideration how people were living while on the streets and what they need. I think the design of the apartment is really special and unique. There are so many features that you really won't find in other buildings. It's a flat, fun, and it's really special program that we have at the center. And it's just so thoughtfully designed and so beautiful.
When we first left, it was, I don't know how we're going to make this work. And now that we have this, I can spend my energy on taking care of them instead of figuring out how I'm going to make this work. And that's what I was really empowering about being able to live there.
The durability and sustainability is everything from as much as we possibly could within our budget to get energy efficient appliances in here, energy efficient systems in here so that the costs are less in operating the building.
This building gave so much peace of mind because of the utility cost model. The way it's designed makes utilities very, very reasonable. And that was one thing I was worried about when we were looking for places, how am I going to manage costs like electricity, and this building took all that away.
when people come in and they see this beautiful space and they think it's so unusual for a nonprofit, why is it so unusual for a nonprofit? If we're talking about equality, everyone deserves beautiful design, beautiful spaces in order to work, play, live.
I think the design is important for everyone because I think everyone deserves to have a place where they can go and feel safe. We can make it manageable and they can take care of these little important things that are going to grow up and be part of the world someday. That they grow up feeling that the world is a safe and comfortable place.
I've been from both worlds. I've seen the world. And so what I came to report this is this.
After living in the new project network, you're not willing to go back and live on the bridge. You're not willing to be part of the homeless scene downtown. You want to know how to get into the beach. Going back out to nothing, this is not an option for me.
That's it, thanks. So open up to questions. We have maybe a few minutes left. Yep.
How have you seen, you spoke a little bit about how each of those three buildings has impacted the neighborhood, or your hope is that it's a catalyst for the surrounding neighborhood. Can you speak at all to how that impact has already been happening throughout the buildings being there and the services that they are providing?
Yeah, I can give a little bit of context with the Bud Clark Commons. It's been open the longest. We had a 1 year and a 2 year follow-up with the community in the same CAC like advisory group that we had during the design. We brought them back. We brought in the police force. We brought in the fire department. We brought in the city, and we talked about how are things going. And while there are a lot of things that happen at the building, there's a lot less stuff happening on the streets. So people always joke that there's always an ambulance in front of the Bud Clark Commons, but that's an ambulance that was probably having to help someone in an even worse condition a few years later in a stoop or under a bridge. So it's been pretty positive for the most part downtown. With the Bud Clark Commons calls on average have gone down. And then the other thing is, during the design process, we wound up land banking half the block because of the recession. They didn't have enough funds. And the county is now going to be placing their health clinic, their free health clinic, next door. And so that's a great sort of symbiotic relationship that can happen there. And I think it really says something that when you come off the train in Portland, the first buildings you see are going to be buildings to help people. Yep.
I came in a little late, so I may have missed something, but the first thing I had to say was that it is cheaper to provide housing for people than to deal with the homeless on the streets. Can you elaborate a little further on that?
Sure, you bet. Yeah. There have been a number of studies recently. So Sean Donovan, who's the secretary of HUD, before he was at HUD, he was at the New York Housing Authority, and he really pushed this housing first concept. And it wasn't just a humanitarian concept, it was also an economic concept. And there have been a number of studies across the country in different communities, and the numbers kind of go up and down. But the one thing that's always common in these studies is that it is always cheaper to give someone a free apartment than to have them on the streets, having to use the emergency room more often. Emergency room visits go down, counseling goes down, social services go down, medical needs go down. So the cost of the apartment is really a minor thing when it comes to the cost of emergency services. Yeah.
If you talk some about the design process and involving the community,
yeah.
The residents, CAC.
Yeah. So I mean, we knew doing the Bud Clark Commons was going to be a huge undertaking for the city, putting this very controversial building right in the heart of, and right in the entry to downtown. So we brought in stakeholders from the social service agencies, we brought in neighbors, we're close to the Chinatown, so we brought in the Chinese Benevolent Association, business owners, and then also homeless individuals, people that were living in shelters that wanted to engage and be a part of the process. So we had a wide spectrum of people that we all gathered on Saturdays for, I think, about 6 months, once a month, and went through the design process. And I gave them updates about how things were going, got feedback. That's where we got ideas about like the garden and the exercise room. They originally wanted a basketball court, but we couldn't fit one. So it was a very interactive process, and it wasn't top down. It was really from the bottom up. Yeah. Yeah.
In the first project, you talked about how you did the elevators and made them slower to encourage people to take the stairs. And being that this conference is all about designing for equity,
right? Is
that really designing for equity? And can you speak to how you deal with the challenge of wanting people to take the stairs but having equal accessibility for everyone?
It's a really good point. It's a really good question, and it's something we struggle with a lot. I think there's a difference between hiding the elevator and making the elevator not universally accessible, or making you feel like a second-class citizen to use that elevator. So the elevator is tucked right around the corner, but you go through the same door to get there. You come up to the same lobby, and the experience is the same. But when you're a user, an office worker going up and down the floors all day long, it's quicker to use the stairs because it's closer, and it's also well, it's closer to where you're trying to get. So it is something that you try to balance. The other thing that we did very intentionally was we had the split level site. We're on a slope. So making sure that you could get, anybody from the public could get into the shelter or into the day center at grade without having to use a ramp, a handrail, an elevator. That's one of the problems with the downtown service center here in Seattle, is you got to go downstairs to the basement. And not only is it not as dignified, it's not as easy. And so a lot of people don't do it. And they just don't want to bother. And especially people that have real mobility challenges. So making that as easy and simple for people was a huge part of the design. Any other questions? Yeah.
Seems to be done some sort of high-end condos and restaurants. How did you win these kind of jobs? How did you get into this?
There were a lot of confused looks when we were awarded the Buckard Commons. It was an open RFP process that the Housing Authority put on, and things were starting to slow down. You know, it was 2007, and we saw this as just this amazing project. Like, it was just, we had done one project for a nonprofit called New Avenues for Youth, which is a homeless youth organization, and we'd done a drop-in center for them, a much smaller renovation type thing, but we'd gotten a taste of how awesome it is to work on projects where, like, how many unique design opportunities there are for these kinds of projects, and how fulfilling it was to work with folks, and how engaged folks that don't usually get to work with an architect become when they get that chance. And so it's a really fulfilling and enriching process. So we went after it hard. We interviewed, I think we interviewed really well, and we spoke from the heart. We admitted our naivete, but I think that actually helped, because we weren't coming to the project with preconceived notions. We were coming to the project with a completely open mind. And I think we got lucky. I think a big part of it was the city wanted to have a signature building and make a statement. And so they didn't just want it to, I mean, it still met the budget, met the schedule, but they wanted something more than that.
Did it help to redirect the portfolio that was?
Yeah, so I mean, the other two projects came because of that, and I went too slow, and there were 3 other projects that are now going on right now. We're now getting into education. We're working on an alternative school for at-risk youth. We're doing a Boys and Girls Club out in the lowest economy in Portland. And we're doing a lot of renovations of public housing. We now just got a job for the Asian community, doing an Asian Health and Service Center in the new Jade District of Portland. So it is creating this part of our studio, and I think it's something that really gives us a lot of fulfillment.
Do you think it informs sort of requirement rate housing when you think about accessibility issues and you think about
Durability.
social access and the psychological transitions that have to happen in the lower income brackets? How does that influence your market rate work?
It's interesting. I think the market rate work has also changed because we've gone from the condo market to the apartment market. And things just aren't condos being built right now in Portland. There's only one condo project in construction. So going from high-end condos to housing for chronically homeless people now to a lot of market rate apartments, it's been an interesting transition. I'd say the same concepts that we used in high-end condos were what we tried to bring to the low-income housing about light and scale and proportion and materiality and all those sorts of things. And I think we carry those through to the apartment projects that we're doing now, the market rate projects we're doing now as well. I think the design process is something that has changed how we do our market rate projects. I think the engagement of our clients and the users, like we can't really engage renters of apartments very easily when it's speculative, but how we engage our clients in the building these buildings, how we come to design solutions, I think is a lot messier and less like, here's our solution, right? It's a lot more engaged, the creative process. Yeah.
As a firm getting a lot more into the realm of helping people and doing different things, is the firm looking at doing any humanitarian work that isn't commissioned?
Yeah, so we are. We've joined the 1% for 1% for Architecture program from Public Architecture. Right now, I've got 2 projects that we're doing pro bono. Both of them are family shelters. So one of the awful things that's happening in the homeless community is there are lots of homeless families, and a lot of them are on the outskirts. So one of the projects we're doing right now is turning an old. Well, this is kind of funny. It's turning a vegan strip club into a family shelter. But because it turns out strip clubs make really great shelters. They've got a ton of HVAC. They've got really durable materials. They got a great kitchen, lots of bathrooms. And so, yeah, so that's one of our pro bono projects is turning a house of sin into a place of hope. Yeah.
I wanted to ask, a while back, there was a couple that they were millionaires, and since then, millionaires they don't have much money, so focusing on billionaires. But anyway, I haven't heard about your story about how they left society because, where it was going, and now it's like, I wonder what they think about it now. And I'm not sure if they have tried to move everybody forward. It seems like they got back there and somebody else has come through to give their expertise, not really paying attention to anybody except for money. And that's why the millionaires, they went to the country out in the forest, whatever, and started over. So why spend all your money when that's a lot of, and so I still haven't heard their story. It seems like somebody's coming in and still, the rich are still the only ones that know how to stay rich, know how to keep, yeah, and, and do that, even when they want to.
One thing I would say is I learned a lot about how public funding works doing these projects, and it's really atrocious how much money goes towards affordable housing, goes towards homeless services, goes towards those in need, and especially on a federal level. It's getting worse and worse and worse. If you look at the dollars spent in 1979, it has flatlined. HUD has flatlined. No inflation, it has flatlined. It's the same, so it's going down because cost of money is going up. And you look at, what welfare and, Social Security and Medicare, and the cost of defense spending is skyrocketing, and HUD has flatlined. And it's a sin. So I'm not sure how we change that. Yeah.
I'd like to follow up on my first question. With the success of these 3 buildings in Portland, has there been a lot of public notice? Are politicians picking up your message? Are people rethinking the priorities of spending?
Yeah, I think the housing first idea is getting a lot of traction. And we're seeing, I give tours of the building at least once a month. And I know the Housing Authority is giving even more tours of agencies from across the country, some even from other countries that are looking to see how they're doing what they're doing in Portland. But it's not enough, right? There's only 130 units in the Bug Park Commons. It's the only housing first building we've built in Portland. And there's still, 2,000 people that are going to sleep in doorways tonight. So, I think it's making a big difference, but we have a long, long way to go. Can't end on that note. We don't know a happier note. Yeah.
Coming out now, they're like rectangle people. That doesn't go with your heart, your existence, your love, it's just, I don't know, it's like you're living in, I don't know, somebody says they don't like it. They hate it, but that's what they're building.
Well, we had a client, actually a very well-to-do client, who lived in his house and they're in an office over there. He called us one day, walking through his neighborhood, and he's like, I'm looking at all these buildings, and they're all square. And I'm looking at all these trees, and none of them are square. Why are the buildings always square? And so we had to explain to him the economies of how you make building materials and how 2x4 studs work and sheets of plywood and the sort of everyday, how you get a building built. It's very difficult to make a curved building. But for sure, I think thinking about the human body and how it works with the space around it and scale, proportion, materials and touch, all those things come into play. So while there are efficiencies and ways to build buildings that we can afford that usually wind up kind of square, I think how you treat those squares is really, really important. Have we passed our time?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.